everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, thank you for joining us today. Welcome back to the Wayfinding series. I'm Gretchen, and I have, of course, the pleasure of co-presenting this series with our Director of Career and Alumni Services, Nicole Dale. And today we're also actually teaming up with our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Alliance to present today's speaker. So again, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. So the name of this series, the Wayfinding series, comes from a term used primarily in graphic and interior design to describe the signage and architecture used to guide a person through a space. And so that's why we chose this name, right? It makes sense that within this series, where we're hearing from ambitious and inspirational creative professionals about their unique path towards a successful creative life and all the twists and turns involved in that journey, we call it the Wayfinding series. And I also was thinking about this today because that might lead you to assume that we're hosting today's speaker, Thomas Evans, who also goes by the name Detour, simply because there's a fitting alignment with his name in our series. But that couldn't be further from the truth, but it was something I wanted to address. We have long wanted to connect you all to this dynamic and accomplished artist, and we're really so glad to have Thomas here today as part of our series with absolutely no pun intended. Thomas Evans, aka Detour, is an all-around creative. Focusing on the intersection of art and innovation, he specializes in large-scale public art, interactive visuals, portraiture, immersive spaces, and creative direction. A born collaborator and military brat, Thomas pulls inspiration from a variety of experiences, environments, and perspectives. You have surely seen his work throughout the Denver metro area, or maybe you even picked up his book titled Be the Artist, the Interactive Guide to a Lasting Art Career. Or maybe you know him through a project titled They Still Live, made in collaboration with our very own Tia Anthony. Or maybe today you're learning about his work for the first time. Well, whatever your existing knowledge of Thomas's work, you are in for an inspirational conversation today, I am sure. And it makes me have such a pleasure to introduce Thomas Evans.
Hello, hello. So let me see about sharing my screen. Okay, there we go. And let's do a little play. So hello, everyone. So my name is Thomas Evans, aka Detour. Basically, I'm just like a full-time creative that specializes in almost everything. But for those that really don't know me, some of those that do and just don't know the entire story, I'm just going to give a little bit of a background about sort of like where I sort of came from. And if you want to ask questions throughout this sort of presentation, definitely do that. I just don't want to hear myself talk the whole time. So let's go through this presentation of where I came from. So my family's, my dad's military, West Point grad and everything. So I was born in Dayton, Ohio, but never really lived there. Moved around pretty much everywhere. So from Fort Lee, Virginia, Charlotte, North Carolina, South Carolina, Germany twice. Spent about 8 years over there, St. Louis, and a couple other places, but moved around everywhere. And that's sort of like where I got my love of art, was, you know, having to sort of create artwork wherever I go to make friends and just build with people and build relationships. So, you know, I just kept doing that throughout every move that I did, because we would move every 3 to 5 years. And the last place my dad got stationed was in Denver. So basically, I attended the University of Colorado, Denver for my bachelor's. I went to community college in Illinois, but transferred over here to do business. And then actually did my MBA as well, because, you know, family was very kind of strict. I'm the only artist in my family. So a lot of them sort of were steering me towards something more traditional, just like, you know, where there's a ladder and sort of benefits and all the other stuff. So business is what I thought they would sort of like. And, you know, I wasn't too mad about that, because I thought I could get into advertising, which was, I thought at the time, like a good mix between being creative and sort of doing business. But throughout my entire sort of academic career, even in high school, I was doing artwork. But then in college, I also did a ton of stuff: DJ, dance, organized events, did events promotion, marketing for people, videography. But I was also just like making art, and art from the stuff that I really liked. I went from doing airbrush T-shirts to doing stuff on vinyl records and speakers and things like that. So I would just sort of paint the things that I really liked around me. So I was big into shoes as well. And sort of these pieces of artwork were sort of like some of my first sort of really interactive ones, where just like you could hook up a speaker to it. That's that cord at the bottom of those pieces. And big into dance as well. So, doing work that sort of emphasized that throughout my career. But then, I graduated, like we all do. Hopefully, we all do, and basically figuring out, how to pay back some of the tuition and everything. I got a job at an advertising agency, which is what I thought. I thought it was like, cool people and sort of like working on these little creative briefs and stuff like that. But it ended up not being that at all. Sort of like this is what I sort of felt inside whenever I sort of went to the office, and hated that feeling, and tons of cat fighting, and the inner office politics and things like that. And I just hated how I felt, and the work that I was doing. It felt like I was being stifled creatively. So I actually left that job and tried to join the military. I was like, hey, let me do 4 years. Most of my family's military, so let me do 4 years and figure it out afterward. But I actually tore my LCL in my knee, a ligament in my knee, and was basically on crutches for a while. And that led me to an opportunity to volunteer in Tanzania for a while. And basically I was like, I'm not doing anything in the States. I don't know where, sort of like my life is going at the time. But I got this opportunity through a nonprofit that I donated artwork to, and talked to them about sort of going out to Tanzania with them. So they gave my contact to someone who founded a school out there. And basically, almost a month and a half later, I was flying to Tanzania, and didn't really know anyone, didn't know the language or anything, but it was one of the most exciting times of my life right there. But, I got the appreciation of just like what I have, and sort of got away from a lot of the materialistic things, and sort of figured out what was important to me in my life. And when I came back, luckily, Denver legalized marijuana. So the city was growing, a lot of money was just coming in, a lot of people were opening up businesses, and my friend bought a building and turned into artist studios for everyone. So when I came back, I was like, why not just do art full time? Because I was over my fear of failure at the time. And basically in 2014, when I came back, that's when I started doing art full time. And this is basically my first studio. That was like one of the first couple of months I was in there. And for me, it was like sort of a start of a journey, and figuring it out. Didn't know exactly how to get to where I wanted to be, but it was just all about sort of like just putting down that good foundation, and figuring out exactly, what I wanted out of my art career. So that was like one of the things that I really got out of that, was like that trip to Tanzania, is basically sort of figuring out who I was, and figuring out, what I wanted out of my career, and what I wanted out of sort of like the year that I gave myself to do art full time. So I sort of wrote some of these things down in terms of like, what are my goals in terms of short term and long term. Because when you start to figure out what your definition of success is, or some artists may, there's a definition of success, maybe getting into museums and certain galleries, or being collected by certain collectors, whereas others just want to basically paint full time, and they don't care exactly where they're sort of at the moment, or where they're going to be. So everything in between as well. So, do I want to be that Bob Ross, or do I want to be, in the moment type of thing. And you don't have to sort of pick between them. It's kind of like just figuring out exactly what sort of gets you out of bed, what gets you moving, what makes you truly happy, and sort of what sort of do you think your calling is. And throughout the whole time, um, while you're sort of doing your career and sort of creating work and sort of figuring out what you want to do, things change because your priorities change a lot as well. So things consistently change with me throughout the year. And because I was always into sort of like business and business school, stuff like that, I actually did like a whole plan, sort of created a plan for myself in terms of, how do I want to sort of establish myself sort of structurally as an artist? Because regardless of, who you are, Uncle Sam wants his cut of whatever you do. So, I had to sort of really think about the business side of it, and how do I promote myself? How do I sort of market myself? How do I sort of differentiate myself and the work and places that I go? And because I sort of knew my definition of success and where I wanted to be, it was sort of easy to make those sort of decisions in terms of um, where I wanted to put my work, what opportunities I wanted to take on, what would I pass on. And it also sort of informed me on in terms of the mentors I wanted to have as well. So having mentors, I thought was a really big part. And a lot of mine were really informal because most of them were my friends that I looked up to who did a lot of art, and sort of I could reach out to them, and individuals online as well that I sort of reached out to as well. And one of the biggest things too when I first started out was really just building authentic relationships, because every opportunity that I got was through an individual that I had a relationship with. Was through, it could be a friend or a friend of a friend, or someone that I met at a gallery and we started talking, or something like that. So every opportunity, sort of the start of it, is someone that knows of you and has some sort of relationship with you. And then in the end, it's kind of like after all that is said and done, it was really just about, how do I be extraordinary in my own terms? How do I sort of create the work that I want to create and sort of feel good about that, but also, something that is extraordinary, something that people would want to sort of investigate more, or look at, or, whatever. Because one thing I really don't like is the word good or good enough. It's like I want to be, I want to create work that's extraordinary. I want to create work that's amazing. And that's what I always strive to do. And that, like I said, really sort of dictates a lot of the opportunities that I do and the work that I create. How can it be different? How can I just do something that I haven't done before and other people haven't seen before? So that's sort of like where, my mindset was when sort of going through the initial sort of phases of, how do I become this artist I want to be? But yeah, so it's basically living off the art, creating the work that I want to create, and not having someone tell me to, because I did an ad agency stuff, which is really just clients telling you what the work that they want you to do. Building relationships with people that I like, because 99% of this is all about the people you're around and relationships and the community. And just explore outside my initial interest, which was really big because for me, I was more of a 2D artist doing work on canvas. But I really just wanted to explore outside of that: videography, photography, sculptural work, a little bit of everything. So that was really, like I said, when I first started out, that was something that I wanted to do. So like this is an image of one of my fourth mural up top with the roses, and then the one below that with the girl on the pole. That's me in Buenos Aires, Argentina in January. I just went out there just to hang out with a friend, and we went around painting. So it was like I was able to explore different regions of the world now. So, and then when I first started, really just like trying to hone in on what I wanted to do, I actually went to the photography route and started doing a little bit of photography. This is an exhibition that I did that sort of paired African Americans in the community with African artifacts from a recent collection, and we did DNA testing through Ancestry DNA that sponsored the entire exhibition, and we sort of revealed everyone's results at the show, and we had the pieces at the show, and we did a photo shoot with each of the pieces. So that was like, me just getting outside of my comfort zone and sort of picking up the camera and trying to do a creative project that sort of combined the idea of photography with the idea of sort of this anthropology project, lineage project, DNA, family tree sort of project, and how can I mix it up to be something totally new. So that was really interesting, part of my sort of beginnings. And that was like 2015 right there. And then got into doing bigger works and sculptural work. So the two on the left are from Argentina in February or January when I went this year. And then the top right one is one I did for an apartment complex. It was like my first time really working on that sort of size and scale. The one below that is like one of the first sculpture pieces I did. And that was when I was a resident in Redline and really getting into understanding how foam could be used in my studio practice and how I could sort of just put together these different sort of shapes and create this sort of volume that was really just interesting. So got into really just exploring a ton of different things. I was able to build an electric motorcycle and customize it. And this piece was for my previous show called The Five Corners. I think I have a couple other slides about that as well. But, I was able to actually explore, these items that usually wouldn't be in a gallery space, but how do I sort of create this motorcycle that could be used as an art piece? And a lot of it was built, especially the shell was built out of foam and everything. But it's a functioning actual electric motorcycle. And this was another piece of that same show that I did, where I also built a 6 foot tall harp that hooks up to the computer so you can sample sounds on each of the strings. And to the right of that was sort of the space was basically just telling the story about this band in the future that I just made up. And I wanted to sort of create a space where it's kind of like it gets you outside of your sort of reality. And I was able to sort of just create like a fictional story about a band. So there was sort of no limitations at all. And that was this previous year in November, I believe, when it opened. And really just throughout sort of the past 5 years, I've been able to sort of just work with the people that I wanted to. This one was sponsored by Red Bull. They paid for most of the pieces to be constructed and everything. But it was a lot of just great opportunity just to sort of just explore and figure out exactly, what I'm interested in and how to sort of go about creating it and having fun too. And these pieces were recent this year after COVID happened and a lot of the Black Lives Matter protests happened and all these different tragedies, using my artwork when it comes to a lot of the street art to sort of tell the stories of the voiceless and, sort of tell stories about individuals in Denver that were victims as well. So the bottom left one was an individual, Isabella Thallis, who passed away, who was gunned down in the ballpark neighborhood about 2 months ago. And that one was really special because it was for the family and everything. But recently I've been using a lot of my work to sort of work with the community and work with a lot of social causes, especially when it comes to the mural part of it. So I've been traveling doing that as well. But trying to diversify the work that I do as much as I can. And recently also put out a book in February. But COVID sort of put the kibosh on a lot of the artist talks and the sort of book signings that I was going to do. But it's still out there. But the book is, really just a great opportunity that I had to actually work on my writing skills. And because I was sort of really big into visuals. I sort of didn't really think a lot about the idea of literature and how I need to sort of work on sort of make working on exercising the different parts of my sort of literature background so that it's so that's can be a part of the art that I do just as much as anything else. So like the previous work here was I had to write an entire story. So like I felt like J.K. Rowling's in terms of just like writing sort of like this fictional story. So the book helped me out in that aspect as well. But put out a book recently just about a lot of the nuances of trying to have a sustainable art career, and whether you're doing it full time or part time, it's like how do you sort of create a career that isn't sort of taxing on a lot of the resources, because whatever you do, it takes a lot of time, energy, and just resources to do. So how do you do that sort of sustainably as a creative? And there's always things that change. And recently I've been going a little bit bigger with a lot of the work that I do. So these are from the past couple of months. So the one on the left is in Durham, North Carolina. I did that one about 3 weeks ago. And then the one on the right was one I did about a month and a half ago in Milwaukee. But a lot of the work that I do that relates to the street art or the public murals that I do is a lot about representation and community. And that's something that I really wanted to hone in on, especially when it came to anything that I do outside of the studio. So a lot of the work is basically painting people in the community, or painting people from a different community that want them to sort of visit the community I painted them in. So like the one on the right is my friend JC and his son that I know, and painted him in Milwaukee. So he actually took his family from Denver all the way to Milwaukee to visit the mural and do a pop-up sort of exhibition and sort of connect with the neighborhood and the assisted living facility that the mural is actually on. So a lot of the work that I do is really just all about sort of how can I build community in different ways. And this is one of the recent ones I've done at the Crush Mural Festival. And that was basically 2 weeks ago, I think. Yeah, about 2 weeks ago, and on 27th and Larimer. So a lot of the work that I like to do as well, like I said, it's like I like to evolve, and sort of the execution of a lot of my murals change over time. It's very difficult sometimes to experiment with larger sort of works, whatever you're doing, because it just takes a lot of time to put together. So you really have to be intentional. But from time to time, I really just like to play around with the large scale works that I do. And this is something really different that I haven't done before in terms of the background and sort of the mixing of the various colors, dynamic colors in the face with the flat colors in the background, and sort of how that intersects and everything. So it was like my first time sort of attempting that. But I like to experiment as much as I can whenever I get into sort of the street art mode. But some key lessons that I've been learning over sort of the course of sort of creating and sort of figuring out how do I sort of navigate this art world, because it's changing so much. It's definitely something where there was a lot of gatekeepers before, but now there's just too many gates to keep, where now it's like you can be any sort of artist you want to be, and actually still make it. So how do we navigate this sort of digital world where everything is globalized, and everyone has access to everything? And one of the sort of the key lessons that I always go to are these sort of points right here, and that's like not relying on previous accomplishments. And that's just a better way of saying try to always evolve, and not sort of stay stagnant, because the work that I was doing I really loved, but I don't want to rely on the success of my previous work. I always want to sort of keep pushing myself, and there's going to be a lot of sort of downfalls, but really that's sort of where it's all about. A lot of the things that I do are a part of a lot of the failures that I had in the past, and sort of take cherry picking some of those projects that you've had in the past and saying what you liked, what you didn't like, but keeping what you did like and throwing away what you didn't like, and sort of carrying that to the next thing. That's sort of how you evolve. You are what you eat. That's one idea of a better way of just saying you have to really consume sort of a little bit of everything. Get outside your local or just your comfort zone, or get outside your city, get outside your own studio and collaborate with people. Start doing residencies in other countries or other places you haven't been before, or pick up a new skill that you haven't really thought about as well, because that's really how you sort of start connecting these ideas that you have, and you're able to actually sort of grow. Because before it's like you're limited based on the skill set that you do have, and that sort of limited sort of mindset that you do have. But when you start to get into different things, you start to really expand your creativity and really what's possible in your studio space and outside your studio space. If you're on time, you're late, and that's just really all about being professional. Really just going above and beyond whenever you're working with people, because no artist is on an island. We're always sort of relying on other individuals to sort of create, things and gallery spaces and exhibitions and sort of opportunities for us schools, your professors. So like you really have to make sure you're just as professional when it comes to sort of your creative career. Figure it the F out. And that's really all about just not always asking for permission or asking how to do things, because a lot of what we do is new. It's like when you want to create new things, when you want to create something that someone else hasn't done, and go to places someone else hasn't been, there's not really sort of a path or sort of like a beaten path to those areas of life, or there's not a guidebook. There's nothing that can really tell you. So you have to really learn how to figure things out yourself, how to figure out how do I sort of do this art project in the middle of the ocean and have someone pay for it, or a business pay for it type of thing, or get it funded. How do I sort of get this project into a museum that I really want? How do I sort of get this material, that's not usually sort of made for this type of art? So, all these different things, it's like half my day is just trying to figure out how to do different things. But when you start to learn how to figure things out and have strategies, a lot of things start to become a lot easier in this sort of life where there's like no guarantees, especially in the art world. And patience is key. This is huge. I just did an Art Tip Tuesday. I do this post on my Instagram called Art Tip Tuesday, and it's really just about sort of giving artists sort of lessons and guidance and tips that I've been learning. And this past Tuesday, I did one on sort of the sort of virtue of being patient, because it just takes time to sort of grow as an artist, and nothing happens overnight. A lot of the work that I've done was based off of the foundation I sort of built as a kid, just drawing all the time, and getting into airbrushing and getting into all these different sort of things that sort of led up to where I am now. And even the work that I'm going to do in 5-10 years, this is the foundation for that right there. So it's all really just building blocks, and just sharing some of the work I was doing actually in like middle school and high school. So like this is 2000 and like 2001. So this is like the work that I was doing. So a lot of people that, will do work like this in high school and stuff like that, especially today when they go on social media and they're sort of inundated with artwork by artists that have been doing it for a long time, sometimes you can get discouraged. But just understanding that, a lot of times it just takes time to get to where you want to be is super important. So, sharing, like, I just wanted to share sort of like what I was doing in the year 2000 and 2001. Yes, I am a little bit old. But artist commandments, things to live by that I always sort of instill in myself. And, you're 100% responsible. It's just like making sure you're accountable, because no one's holding your hand at the end of the day. No one's sort of holding your hand to get up, do a meeting, come to the way finding sort of presentation and make sure that's on point. No one, I don't have a secretary. So like, you're 100% responsible is really huge, especially when you're sort of going into a career that is really just all about you and sort of what you can do. Embracing the grind. It's a hard journey. So you really have to enjoy it. I enjoy getting up early and getting to the studio and just grinding things out and sort of putting out fires and learning how to sort of avoid obstacles, things like that, and just like challenging myself. So I enjoy the grind, and you really have to sort of embrace it if you really sort of want to do the work you want to do. Don't doubt yourself, just do it. A lot of times we are our first barrier when it comes to a lot of opportunities, because we don't apply for different things because we may not think we're going to get in. If you want to do a MFA at Yale and you're like, well, I can't get into Yale. I mean, that's really just you saying you can't do it. So really getting over your sort of doubting yourself is one of the first goals. And that when you start to get over that and start to really just think that you can do pretty much anything and everything if you put your mind to it, that's a huge step right there. Really don't doubt yourself, just do it. Don't take things personally. And a lot of times when you're going through your career, you're going to go through a lot of rejection and a lot of criticism, and that really sometimes can hurt. But a lot of times it's not sort of anything that was your fault or your doing, because it could be the selection committee may just want more photographers than painters, or more sculptures than photographers. So sometimes when you're not picked for something, it's nothing personal. So learning that will get you into the idea of having sort of skin made of Teflon, where it's kind of like you're able to go through and get rejected, but still wake up tomorrow and apply for 100 different things and still hold your head up high. And then lastly, create your own opportunities. A lot of times, we were, especially before the 90s or even before 2000s, it's kind of like a lot of people really had this idea of going through the sort of path that everyone else took. And that sort of path is sometimes limiting. Everyone's done it. But when you start to figure out creating your own opportunities, creating your own gallery sort of exhibitions, and not waiting on being represented, or creating your own opportunities for residencies. The residency I did in Buenos Aires, that was something that I created with the organization. Didn't really have to wait on anything. When I did my last exhibition, that was me sort of putting together that exhibition and finding the space, and then finding the funders and getting sort of the work done. A lot of the work that I do, especially with the murals, is like self-activating and not waiting on sort of an open call or someone to call me to commission a mural. A lot of the stuff that I do is self-activated, and that brings on more opportunities for you to create the way you want to, and when you want to. So creating your own opportunities is really, really huge whenever you're thinking about sort of getting into the creative career, because like I said, there's this career is all about creating the things that others haven't seen, or creating something new. So really, it's like you have to sort of take a detour, no pun intended. You have to take a detour on sort of that sort of creative career that everyone else has, and figure out how you can sort of do something that's different and do something in your own way, because that's really how you sort of stand out from everyone else. So creating your own opportunities is huge. And yeah, I think that's really the idea behind sort of most of my career right there. It's just really sort of trying to create the things that I want to do, when I want to do it, how I want to do it, and sort of have fun with it. And basically, that's how I've been sort of living my life, my creative life for the past 5 years. Um, I think, I don't know if you have any questions right now
We
that we
do,
want to go through.
Thomas. Yeah,
Yeah.
we do. Man, that is just chock full of good advice. I knew you were going to bring the advice. so, so great. But yeah, we did have a couple of questions come in, and I'm going to start with Tia Anthony.
Yay,
She
Tia.
had a question. Come on, you can go ahead and, oh, there you are, Tia.
Yes. Hey, Thomas, how are you?
Hey, good. How you been?
I'm very well, thank you. I wanted to say, first of all, thank you so very much for being here. And of course, you know, I have had the honor and privilege of exhibiting with you and working with you and chatting with you over these last few
Yeah,
years.
you're on the They Still Live. Yeah.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
really has, you know, has expanded my thought process and my practice as well. So I wanted to say thank you for that. My question is, your relationship with space has drastically expanded as your murals are sometimes temporary. How do you reconcile with having these monumental works of art painted over or removed?
I mean, that's one of the things that I think you really have to learn about sort of street art, and especially in the U.S., the way we sort of the city planning, the way a lot of our buildings and architecture are really temporary, what we call old and historic. You know, in the UK, you know, that's like new. You know, so especially out here, I've come to really understand and sort of really accept that a lot of the street art that I do will one day get covered up or sort of you know, destroyed or painted over or whatever. So I'm always sort of aware of that, and I have no problems with that, especially if it makes way for sort of new artists, if it makes way for new ideas and designs. That's something that I just, you know, come to sort of, like I said, accept in many ways. And a lot of times, you know, I see a lot of my work that's old. You know, it could be 3 or 4 years old, but I'm like, I'm looking at it in a different light where I'm like, I want to cover it up and change it up because I'm like, ooh, you know, those proportions are a little off or something, you know, or those colors have faded or something. But, you know, for me, it's something that I learned is temporary. There's also street art where it's kind of like you really want to sort of keep it intact. So a lot of the Chicano artists in LA and Mexico have sort of art that has been sort of there for, you know, decades, half a century, almost a century long. And those are ones that really sort of tell the story of, you know, what was happening during that time. So, you know, a lot of times those are the works that you sort of try to preserve as much as possible. But in general, a lot of the street art that I do, you know, I understand is really just temporary.
Right, and then you document it well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Tia. And I think Stan is next and had a question. And before I have you ask your question, Stan, I just want to invite everybody, if you have a question, feel free to put your question in the chat and I can read it off. But alternately, you can go down to the participant section at the bottom of the window. And when you click on that, there's a raise hand function. And so you can raise your hand and then I can kind of keep track of who all has questions and we'll invite you to turn on your camera and mic to ask your question. But first, yeah, Stan, go right ahead.
Hey, Thomas.
Hey.
I've been following your career on Instagram for quite some time now.
Awesome.
And you're extremely inspirational. But I thought it was interesting in your presentation, you talked about your background, getting your degrees in business and making your business plans and things like that. Not so different from my background as well. And I found that when I'm making goals, it's kind of like a moving target. And by the time I've achieved a goal, my targets have already moved. So I didn't know whether or not that's the way you handled things, or if it was more like a video game where you get to a target, you've achieved it, and then you level up and make a new goal?
Yeah, so a lot, like I have these short-term goals that I want to achieve, and then I really have like these long-term goals that I want to achieve. So like a long-term goal is like having sort of a residency, more residencies in other countries, or having an art studio space where I can sort of create large sculptural pieces. And, you know, I have these short-term goals that sort of lead up to that when it comes to sort of the idea of like building up my resume, or uh, getting more financial support for those sort of goals, long-term goals that I do have, or being in a certain museum, you know, things that I want to do. But they're always changing from almost month to year, because things just pop up, and sort of these other interests sort of are created. Because, you know, 3 years ago, I wasn't really thinking about a book. Whereas like the last year or the year before, it's like that's when I had to really start writing a book. And now it's like a new goal of getting the book out there. Before I went on a residency, wasn't really thinking about sort of doing residencies out of country. And then once I get this opportunity to do one, you know, now I'm like, I'm always thinking about residencies out of country. So a lot of times your goals will change, and that's pretty much fine. Um, like I said, like when I was talking about like embracing the grind, part of that is just like not sort of being on this sort of path that you can't change it, and you feel frustrated when you're sort of off that path. A lot of times for me, it's like uh, I don't have like this point B all the time that I'm sort of like always reaching to, because I know things change up so much that, you know, I'm just trying to enjoy the journey and try to enjoy it from month to month and year to year. Or my long-term goals may be a lot of times vague and sort of murky and sort of blurry, where it's more of an overall thing. Um, Whereas like my short-term goals are a lot more concrete and things that sometimes don't change. Like I have to get this exhibition done by the end of the year, or I have to get all these projects with this brand, or I have to get this museum done. So it changes a lot, and really it's like it depends on your career and sort of sometimes your tolerance, because everyone has a different sort of lifestyle and other responsibilities as well. I know it may change when I have kids or I get married or something like that. So a lot of times you have to be super flexible with your short-term and long-term goals. But as long as you're enjoying the journey and you feel like you're growing from day to day to month to year, I think that's okay.
Thank you.
Great question, Stan. I appreciate you. Well, yeah, if anyone else has any questions, please go ahead and speak up or put them in the chat or raise your hand. But I don't see anything right now, but so I might take a moment then to ask a question, because I so appreciate your always like being one step ahead and planning ahead and making the opportunities for yourself, so then more opportunities come to you. And I think one question we hear from students oftentimes is that like tipping point of like going after projects that maybe don't pay very well or pay a lot early on in their career, to like going after paid gigs and then also kind of connected to that, like how do you at this point in your career decide and weigh like the projects that are worth your time and that you want to participate in? Because I can imagine now, you know, I mean, you know, we invited you here, but you know, you were super busy, and I'm curious about kind of how that decision-making process of like what jobs you go after and take on, or what projects you do. And then now, what are you turning things down, and how do you decide like when to do that?
Yeah, I turn a lot of things down. I mean, like when you're first starting out, it's like you're trying to get everything just to get your name out there, just to get sort of projects funded, you know, pay rent, things like that. But once you start really coming into your own and sort of really having like a signature and a voice that people demand, that's when you're starting to get projects to where you can get the funding or the budget that you want, and creating the work that people want as well. And that just takes time, and everyone's on a different sort of timetable when it comes to that. When I first started out, I was doing everything. And then when things got too hectic, I sort of had to really scale back on the projects that I did, and sort of only take on the ones that either they opened me up to a new network and new opportunities, or it sort of paid really well so that I can use that funding to do other stuff. Because a lot of the projects that I do for income, sometimes, it's not the most glamorous, but they pay for a lot of other things that I do want to do. And then what's the other piece? The projects that are just like really interesting and sort of help me evolve over time as well. So like doing the same thing over and over and over, it's like I don't want to feel like a machine. So a lot of times when there is a project that may pay well, it may open me up to a new opportunity, but it's the same thing that I've been doing, the past year, I may sort of pass on that project because it's not sort of mentally fulfilling or won't help me evolve over time. And, for me, time is precious. So I don't want to spend a good month working on a project and, now a month is gone and I didn't feel like I sort of evolved creatively. So a lot of times it's like, I have to really evaluate the projects that I do take on because, they all take time, money, resources, energy to sort of do. So I want to make sure I sort of allocate that to the projects that sort of really put me in a better position to, like I said, do what I want to do and create what I want to create, and all these different opportunities. But a lot of the opportunities that I do get, I created myself. The residencies, I sort of initiated those myself. A lot of the sort of murals are murals that, I went to the owner and talked to them about, painting their wall. And that sort of opened up an opportunity where someone who owns a business drove by that wall and figured out who I was and reached out to me for, painting something else. Sometimes these opportunities, that you do for free are the ones that are most meaningful because you have the creative freedom because no one's paying you and you're able to do what you want to do. And those are the ones that you can put on that portfolio for, an open call for the city or a museum or a group show. And they say, oh, this is what we really want. So, a lot of times you really have to look inside of your own sort of practice and figure out what is worth your time. And because a lot of times it's not just about the income that comes in, it's the time that it takes for you to create that project. It's, the energy that you use and expend to actually complete the project and execute it. It's just like, is it worth, a week of your life working on this thing? And a lot of times it's no. And it's really sometimes hard to sort of pass on those things, but I've become more and more sort of able to do that because I sort of built up, I guess, a sort of a sort of pile of projects that I can just rely on from time to time. And it's definitely something where it's like I try to do at least 5 projects at a time, so that if one falls through or 2 falls through or 3 falls through, I always have the others to sort of go towards, and new ones that I really want to create and self-initiate. And yeah, I mean, it's a sort of thing that you learn over time. How do you get funding to work on a project that you just want to do and create? So learning how to work with businesses and big brands and sort of different organizations and nonprofits to help fund a project that, you just created yourself because there was nothing else out there at the moment. And that's something that I always do from time to time, rather than just relying on projects that I, don't want to do. So hopefully I think that answered the question. I sort of rambled on a little bit.
No, it's great. Yeah, it continues to be advice gold. I hope people are taking notes here. Yeah, that's great, Thomas. Thanks. I think we have time. Maybe we can squeeze in 2 more questions because Zachary, do you want to turn on your camera and mic? You had one. Sorry, I missed that one. And then it looks like Toby has one, and that may be, we'll see how we get through those. Let's see if I can.
Hi, yeah. So my name's actually Tatum. I didn't have my own computer, so I'm sharing Zachary's. And I don't have the camera right now. But I just had a question about specifically your musical sculpture pieces. I was wondering, maybe they already have, but I was wondering if you have plans to have them kind of be played in a live performance setting.
Yeah, so during my show, The Five Pointers, last November, which was part of the piece where I built the harp, and I don't think I showed the drum set or anything. They were actually performed live at the show. We had like almost like a mini concert during the sort of exhibition, and the people that I get to perform I sort of made characters for them and sort of gave them all sort of personalities, and they actually created original songs. So they created an album based on the instruments that I created for the show. So it's like sculpture pieces that were actually MIDI controllers and sort of instruments that you can actually play on. So they played on them for the actual exhibition. Unfortunately, that's like when right after COVID happened. So there wasn't really an opportunity to really do more of those shows, but hopefully there's in the future opportunities to break those instruments back out to do sort of these random pop-ups and different things. So even before I did that show, I was doing sort of canvas pieces that you can actually touch and trigger different sounds on. So it sort of came from that, which also came from the one of the slides that I showed with the shoes and hooking up your phone. So that was like sort of the evolution of that sort of body of work that I'm doing. But yeah, I do have plans to do that. It just takes a long time sometimes to sort of really put that together because I'm not a musician. So it's a lot of collaboration with local musicians in the area to actually like deliver pieces to them and sort of teach them how to play on it, because like this 6-foot-tall double harp was something new for the individual that played on top of it. So but yeah, so I do have plans later on.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, I was glad I had a chance to actually play with some of those at the Denver Art Museum a while ago. So
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that was like a good sort of teaser to the work that I did afterwards. And that really taught me more about the materials that I use in those pieces and body of work, because the museum, I kept having to come back almost every day to fix it because people, you know, if you can touch it, people want to kick it, scratch it, smudge it, you know, eat hot dogs and put ketchup on it, you know. So it's like it taught me a lot about sort of conservation and materials and durability when it comes to sort of the artwork, but also having it being interactive as well. So yeah, glad you enjoyed it.
Cool, thank you. And can I check out that album on your website or?
I think it may be on Red Bull's sort of website. I'm not too sure where it sort of landed, but I'll see about that. I'll see if I can email Gretchen a link or something later on.
Sweet, thank you so much.
All right, I think we have time for one last question, and Toby had his hand up.
Hi, Thomas. Thank you so much. I appreciated the talk. First of all, I need to just point out to everybody listening, if you want to hear more of Thomas, make sure you check him out on the Remotely Creative podcast, which I think everybody here is familiar with. But that said, you are such a natural, in my opinion, from hearing you, a natural educator. Have you ever considered getting into education or teaching? Also, I think we're hiring.
It is something that a lot of people ask me about, but you know, a lot of professors and teachers are overworked, underpaid. You know, you guys go through a lot. I mean, nowadays you not only have to teach, but you know, you have to manage personalities as well, and that's a lot of lot of work, a lot of stress. So a lot of times I like to sort of use my, I guess, ability to educate and teach through like the Art Tip Tuesdays that I do and the book that I do and doing things like this, where it's kind of like, I can come in, wave, say hi, do some stuff, and then leave. And I don't have to sort of do any grading or any other meetings. But that is something that, you know, I definitely have been asked to do from time to time. But it's just like, it's a time commitment. You already know it is. It's a time commitment. You know, it's you know, I don't know, it's like, are you guys doing virtual? Are you guys like in class now? That's a whole nother thing that you guys have to really figure out now. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like, you know, I love the idea, but it's just, you know, how do I sort of fit that into my schedule? But that's where I get into the YouTube videos, the Art Tip Tuesdays, and the book.
Well, adjuncting is a good way to dip your toe in.
What's that?
Adjuncting is a good way to dip your toe in. You know, just throwing it out there.
Yeah. I mean, I love to do like sort of these lectures from time to time. So, you know, I anytime a professor or teacher sort of hits me up, it's like I'm always willing to do talk to the students, because that's the next generation. You know, I gotta get cool with the next generation. Gotta know the lingo. So yes, so if you need me for another lecture or anything, especially if it's Zoom, it's like it's a lot easier on my time than actually going there. But if anyone needs me, it's like I'm always able to do that, because I like talking to the kids and, you know, what's new on TikTok type of thing too. So, you know, it's one of those sort of situations. And I think I have something coming up with Metro State as well. So that's a whole nother sort of thing. But, you know, education is somehow natural to me.
Well, we are so lucky, Thomas, to have you spend time with us. Good job, Toby. Trying to pull him in more.
Just trying to help out.
Good try.
I know.
It was worth a shot.
It's great. Well, Thomas, we could talk to you all day, clearly, and I hope there are opportunities we can bring you back either virtually or to campus as we get back to campus, which will be happening eventually. But yeah, before we go and say a final thank you to Thomas, I have just a couple of quick announcements. I just want to invite you all and remind you to join us next Tuesday and Wednesday for our resource fair and our job fair. So on Tuesday, October 13th at 1:30, we're hosting our resource fair. And then on Wednesday, October 14th at 11:45, we'll be hosting a job fair. And we all know we need more resources and work and support. So please join Mel Kern, our Director of Student Life, and Nicole Dale, Director of Career and Alumni Services for those events. And you can learn more about that at remcad.edu/events. And then lastly, I'm going to continue to plug voting at every event. Please be sure to exercise your civic privilege, actually, and make sure you have the information to vote. You can find out more about registering to vote and all the resources you need in order to vote at remcad.edu/vote. Okay, final thank you to Thomas. Round of applause. I saw a few people do that. Thanks again, Thomas. We hope to see you again soon. And best of luck with everything this year. And yeah, thanks for spending time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And like I said, if you ever need me again, just reach out.
We will do that. We will do that.
All right,
Take care of yourself. Thanks everybody
Thank you.
for coming. See you next time.